Whenever a report like this comes out, it's always such a difficult task to sit down and read it. Trust me, I know. It took me weeks to go through this, but for you, I did. Too long didn't read. Advocacy for Disability Inclusion in Malaysia report. Let's go. So basically, it's about how and why people with disabilities, PWDs, need to be integrated into society and how the right move will secure us as a political bargaining chip, and how useless the Persons with Disabilities Act 2008 really is. If you don't want to basically, you can go read the report yourself at the link I've provided. It's well worth the read, honestly, if a bit dry. It talks about how one of our main problems is that we suffer from the charity model and society ignoring reasonable accommodation, even though Malaysia sits on the United Nations Human Rights Council. Tut tut, I hear you say. I also tut. Because how have we not collectively done anything since the 2019 Sustainable Development Goals Summit? I don't even know. The data was collected as a confidential survey where the people who took it were PWDs themselves, carers, siblings, and parents of, and disability support persons who are above 18 years of age and have a MY card. You can find more data in the report itself if you love seeing numbers and tables. Respondents pointed out very obvious problems, to us afflicted anyway, such as the stigma and difficulty of registering for a disability card under Jabatan Kebajikan Masyarakat, JKM, and voting registration and process. Starting with the disability card, I begin by telling all of you how difficult it is just to sign up for it. The entire process is so prohibitively arduous and lined with bureaucracy, more so if you are disabled. Then comes the problem with stigma. We haven't seemed to have moved away from the ableist idea that if one is disabled, either neurologically or physically, one is therefore less human, so there is fear that the registration solidifies this lesser than ideology. This state of mind is mostly seen perpetrated by the aged and infirm, and oftentimes, unfortunately, parents of children with disabilities. When it comes to voter registration and the voting process, on the other hand, it all boils down to access and information to registration services. Knowledge of the process seems to be the main barrier and should be rectified so that we may allow ourselves the ability to exercise our democratic right. I, for one, am registered and have voted, and can tell you that if I had not been there with family, it would have been very difficult for me to have gone into the hall to hand in my ballot. This is bad for obvious reasons. Eventually, we reach the page where the respondents have outlined areas that they want improved. This fell into 7 main categories and others which were too diverse to quantify. They were the enforcement of rights of persons with disabilities, the improvement of employment inclusion, the improvement of education inclusion, the amendment of the Persons with Disabilities Act 2008, general accessibility, better financial support, and ceasing the use of derogatory labels that undermine our dignity. These numbers were supplemented by case studies, and although I am a disabled person myself, it still fills me with rage and disgust that the spoken of were treated as they were. All very captivating reads and worth your time. If you want me to read them, let me know in the comments, and I very well might. These stories were then broken down alongside the PWD Act 2008 to show just how we are affected negatively by the Act's lack of punitive measures and how these persons have successfully, albeit painfully, circumnavigated these barriers. This is primarily a bit to explain to those in positions of power that the PWD community is indeed an important voting bloc to try and cajole, and it really grinds my gears that we have to market ourselves with those values to be seen as a human being with equitable needs and a want to function safely and happily within our community. If you think so too, heads up. You might not care about politics, but politics sure cares about you. Your apathy feeds into injustices, and it's a long road if we keep ignoring it. Oh, and you should read the report.